Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh. I'm John Luciew. We're all out at St. Vincent College, where the Steelers got a reprieve from the pads today, much to the chagrin of Mike Tomlin. But, a little bit of rain in the afternoon, and then the sun came out. But by that time, they were all crammed into a St. Vincent College gym, and no pads today. And Tomlin came down then after and spoke to the media. And the impression I got from him is that because they haven't been in pads yet, there's a lot of unanswered questions about this team and about this camp. And you've been here since they started. What is the biggest surprise that you've witnessed while here, and good, bad, or indifferent? What anything stand out at you so far?
It's tough to say, because whenever you are in a training camp environment and you do not have pads on, as Mike T said, it only matters so much. You can't, football in shorts is not football in pads. And so it's very different. But I think the biggest surprise I don't even know if I'd say I was surprised, but it's just how fast Derek Harmon has started. We're not talking about even struggles. We're talking about hitting the ground hard. This guy has taken off on a rocket ship. He looks like a future star. Granted, it's 4 non-padded practices, but he's in the backfield every day. He's getting sacks. He's dogging Zach Frazier. He's doing things that rookies don't usually do. This guy looks like a great player already. And so I guess that's a surprising thing. But there were a few big takeaways. The secondary looked amazing last week. Much better than the offense. The defense just dominated the offense last week. I don't think that's a surprise, considering the talent acquisition and the talent on both sides of the football. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. The D-line looks great. The tight end room obviously looks good. So there are some things that you expected. Aaron Rodgers looks fine. He's still getting acclimated and kind of finding his balances and his surroundings. But I don't know if I'd say anything was surprising. What I would say is, man, Derek Harmon is off to a fast start.
And speaking of someone who's not off to a fast start, we look on the other side of that line, where Broderick is having his issues, and now he's dinged up, and they're talking about trying to give him some help with one of the tight ends. The last thing I heard. How bad is this situation for Broderick Jones right now?
It's been bad, John. It's hard to say that it has been anything other than bad. He struggled, and again, no pads. So I say that kind of with a feigned kind of importance upon it. But still, every time we talk about Broderick Jones, there's something going on. He's hurt now. He'll be back tomorrow. That was one of the big things Mike T did say. So he will be back tomorrow. We're talking about a guy that just can't seem to get the technique right. The consistency from down to down, from play to play, is just so all over the place. It's a real issue, John. He's finding some consistency. That's the big thing. Sometimes it's his pad level. Sometimes it's his hands. Sometimes it's his feet. Sometimes he's ducking his head. There's so many different issues every single play. And it's never, multiple of them. Sometimes he'll rectify the one, and then the next one will come back. It's can we put this together? I am interested to see when pads pop on, because I do think one thing he's done well this year, based on the runs that have hit on his side, is run block. He looks strong again. We know he had the arm injuries last year, so that's always something to think about. So it seems like Broderick at least has that, and if he can be a plus multiplier in the run game, that's a positive for them. But he has struggled. He's allowed a few sacks. In the pads, I'm really interested to see how his pass pro looks, but it's definitely been a struggle for him. And the injury knocked him out, 2 days, really one, because today was a glorified walkthrough essentially, is important. So they need him. They're relying on him. This guy needs to be good for them.
And this was the year he was moving back to his natural position. Now, I did read somewhere that he had slimmed down a little bit, that he might have taken too much weight off. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, he was 305 at OTAs and minicamp. I think he's probably a little lighter now. I think he's probably, 300, 295. He's there, but he kind of said, it's in anticipation that he is going to gain weight throughout the season. That's always been something Broderick has said he's done, is he gains weight throughout the year. He ends up, bulking up 10 pounds. So he feels like, now that he's down there, okay, by the end of the year, he's probably, I don't know, 310, 315, right, which is a healthier weight for him, and somewhere where he kind of feels more comfortable rather than where he's at now, which is 295. I mean, he does look very slim. I mean, listen, I only was out there for 2 minutes, and if you put him and Darnell Washington next to each other, I mean, Washington looks bigger. Washington's over 300 pounds. I don't. I mean, he was last year. Maybe he slimmed down too, but he looks bigger in terms of just mass. So yeah, Broderick's a light tackle.
The the weight I heard was 288. He couldn't be that small, could he?
I don't think he's that small. I think he's probably right around that 300 mark. He's probably 295, 300, somewhere in there. And I think that's a fair weight if you're him and you want him to kind of have a healthy weight and then gain 5 to 10 pounds over the year. I think 310 is a good weight for him. He's going to be a guy that really wants to move out in space, be active in space. His issue has never been brute strength either. Like, that hasn't been the issue. The issue has always been technique. So getting a little more athletic, getting a little more fleet of foot, I think can help him in some areas. Obviously, it's not going to fix the technique issues we talked about, but I'm not against slimming down as long as, he puts 5-10 on during the season, and that generally does happen.
Right. And, of course, the other thing that Mike Tomlin said when he was down there that hasn't been worked out because of they haven't been in pads yet is the pecking order in the backfield. I mean, we have obviously Najee Harris is gone. We have Jaylen Warren, who seemed like he was the heir apparent to a lot more touches in that backfield. But we have this sensational rookie, Caleb Johnson, who is all the buzz. And if you look on social media, they can't wait to see this guy in pads. And then Kenneth Gainwell, who is another sort of veteran journeyman who's coming over from the Super Bowl champion Eagles and kind of wants to get into the mix here and a third down guy. So how do you and I did get the chance to talk to Jaylen Warren today, and I think he was really relishing getting into pads because that's his stock and trade. The pass blocking, which is going to be so key because we just talked about Broderick Jones being an issue. And we have Aaron Rodgers, whose health is going to be a major concern for this team throughout the year. You got to keep the old man upright. So I just think I got the really impression that he's a low-key guy. He's not going to talk smack on anybody. He's going to give everybody his props. But I just think he's relishing getting into those pads and getting into his stock and trade, which is basically blocking the hell out of anybody regardless of size. You know what I mean?
That's where he wins, man. I mean, he's a phenomenal pass protector. That's never been a question with Jaylen Warren. This guy is, for his size, so ferocious at just knocking guys off their whistle. Like, really, I mean, we see guys that are twice the size of him, it seems like, just get knocked back by his brute strength and aggression. And so I'm a huge fan of Jaylen Warren's pass pro. He's a great receiver. He's able to break tackles in space. Like, there's a lot of really good things that you look at and say, man, this guy can play in a lot of different areas. And the Steelers have different skill sets. Caleb Johnson's a big back that can kind of run a little bit in open space, be a home run hitter type. He's a natural zone runner for them. He's maybe not the best pass pro guy, but that's something that, you want to test him on tomorrow when they get into the pads, right? Because they were going to today. And that's something I'm really looking forward to, is just seeing Caleb Johnson, against Patrick Queen. I think that matchup in particular is really going to be fun. And then you kind of look at Kenny Gainwell, who I think people aren't factoring in enough. He's been, a guy that's been a significant receiver. He's been a third down back. He's probably going to be the team's kick returner, as Mike Tomlin kind of alluded to today. So there's going to be roles for all three of these guys. They have a backfield that has different skill sets. They're all different types of players. They're all going to play. So no one's going to take too much of the load on. And you hope that they can kind of together create a really dynamic backfield that creates an efficient rushing attack, because this team needs it, of course. I think to take some pressure off Aaron Rodgers. The offensive line is going to be huge in that, but I think when you look at this room, it is a talented room. Warren, though, I think, I've talked with Jaylen enough this spring and the summer. He has a chip on his shoulder this year. He's being doubted again. It's just kind of who Jaylen is. He feels like he's always underrated, always kind of looked over, and that's, I think, what he looks at again, because everyone's looking at Caleb Johnson, and don't get me wrong, I think KJ is a great player, but I also think Jaylen Warren's a really good player.
Yeah, and even when I was talking to Gainwell, he said, because he's a veteran, he's been around, and the rookie guy coming in is the shiny new coin, and everybody's interested in him, and want to see. And I agree. I can't wait to see what he does in pads as well. I think he's going to be really good. But he said it's only natural for him to be having that buzz. Speaking of the buzz, the big applause lines for Will Howard among the fans,
Yes.
the faithful, getting lots of love from the Steeler fans in the stands who come out here to the Latrobe. Of course, they were disappointed today because they were sent home wet without seeing anything happen in pads. But beyond the hype with Will Howard, what are we seeing on the field? You've watched him. So is he meeting the hype of all these cheering fans?
Listen, I think some people have franchise quarterback expectations for him, which I think is unreasonable for a sixth-round guy, but he's looked good. There's no doubt. He's looked pretty solid. Certainly better than Skylar Thompson, who he's competing with right now for QB3. They've kind of split the reps. He looks better than him. He has a live arm. I think, a lot of people, when he was coming out of Ohio State, said his arm's not great, but I think a lot of it was down to kind of planting his feet in the ground and just saucing that thing through some tight windows. He's put some velocity on some balls. He still throws a great touch. He has that deep ball. There are some good things there in Will Howard's game. They're testing Will Howard. I remember on Sunday they had a 7-on-7 period, and they put him in the threes against the starting secondary in 7-on-7. It went as predictable as you'd think. The secondary washed him. But listen, he at least, I think, is getting better with the speed of the game, processing defenses. It's just different, right? Even from that third team to, when he faces third-team defense versus when that starting secondary, that is a different leap that he's going to have to conquer, and a mountain that he's going to have to conquer eventually. So this, to me, this guy looks solid. I think he's going to win the QB3 job. He'll probably be, the game day inactive. That is the emergency QB for them this year. I don't really see a path, besides injury, to him necessarily going higher than that right now. But I think what he's doing is setting himself up to be a answer there for them, and then certainly right now to make the roster and beat Skylar Thompson out.
Okay, that's interesting because your QB2, Mason Rudolph, seems like the forgotten man. He drifted in and out of the facility. No reporter asked to talk to him at all, and it just seems like an afterthought. Will Howard gets the cheers and the hype, and obviously Rodgers is the this sort of he had a great answer for the Bradshaw question. Bradshaw talked about Rodgers. Steelers should have never signed him. He should be off chewing bark somewhere. And Rodgers had just an eloquent answer. Totally gave Bradshaw his props and wants to get to know Bradshaw. And just finesse that question beautifully. And Tomlin said we'll be hearing from Rodgers tomorrow, and we know Rodgers' good buddy Pat McAfee is going to be broadcasting live from Latrobe, and they were setting up an elaborate studio on the hill. So the spotlight is coming to Western Pennsylvania tomorrow. And what do we expect from Rodgers?
I don't know, probably more about his connection with DK Metcalf, understanding what he wants from his young receivers. He's talked a lot with guys like Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. Those guys haven't really built a rapport as quickly as DK has. He and DK feel more like on the same wavelength now. So I'm interested to kind of hear about that. Less interested to hear more about his wife. You know what I mean? Like that's things that make the headlines in the tabloids and stuff. And I get asked. He's a superstar quarterback, and good for him. But I want to know about, I'm a football reporter. I want to know about these kind of connections with these receivers. Some things about kind of how Aaron is taking practices. Obviously, I'm interested to kind of see the method to Aaron's madness. He's thrown 2 picks. Obviously, in his career, he has the lowest kind of interception percentage in terms of his passing attempts in NFL history. He doesn't throw picks very often. So he's experimenting, and I kind of want to know how he kind of fills that out. I also kind of want to know, how he is feeling out the mobility side of his game. He's now 2 years off the Achilles. I'll tell you what, he's moved around a little bit. He's intentionally rolled out on some plays. He's done that. So there's a lot I think you can hear from Aaron. Last we heard from him was just kind of at the preliminary things, about the Malibu workouts and all that thing. But now he's been here for a week. How are things gelling? And how is he kind of embracing everything? Because I'm interested to see this because this is a young Steelers wide receiver. Outside of DK, it's a young room, and Bobby Trees is there as well. But there's no familiar face here for A-Rod. So who are they going to look at? And who's he going to look at, and who's he developing a rapport to? It certainly seems like so far the rapport is going to the tight end Smith, Fryermuth, and Washington, and of course DK. But can there be another receiver that comes about, and what does he see in these young guys?
Yeah, and when you mentioned Roman Wilson, just the scuttlebutt among some of the Steelers media trying to interview him. Apparently, he's like pulling teeth. He's really
He's low key. He'll do the interviews, but he's not a big guy that loves cameras. He doesn't love talking to people. He just kind of wants to show up, do his work. It's just something I think that Roman is. He's not a super social person in general. So I do think Roman kind of just wants to show up, work, do that. Obviously, media is part of the job, and when he talks, he gives us good info.
But Tomlin kind of hinted he's the same way with the coach. Like very terse and couple word answers on things. And
I mean, that's what he is. He doesn't. He's not. I don't think he's a pensive guy necessarily. I think he's a very straightforward guy. And so that is something interesting. And I mean, while we're on Roman Wilson, we got in the chat right here. Do you think it will be Roman Wilson who will be the wide receiver 2 and 12 personnel? And that's an interesting question because the interesting thing about Roman is, Mike T was asked kind of about Roman's role today, and he's working as a gunner, he's working as a punt returner, he's working as a kick returner, he's also working as a wide receiver 2 right now. And that's the interesting thing. So they're preparing him to kind of wherever he slots in on the step chart based on how he plays. And right now he is that wide receiver 2 in 12 personnel. He is the Z receiver. It's DK and him. And then in the goal line, they are kind of mixing in more of Calvin Austin. But it's mostly him. And in 11 personnel, he's playing more outside than he is the slot. He still gets some slot reps, but not a ton. So their uses for him is like this big test. I don't think it necessarily says, hey, Roman's going to be that. I think it's to say, okay, Roman, we're going to give you this opportunity. Show us what you can do. And if not, maybe Gabe Davis comes in. Maybe they look at an Amari Cooper. Maybe they look elsewhere. Someone like that. I think they need to determine how much they need a receiver. Can Roman Wilson be that guy? Can he be the wide receiver 2-3? And can he play outside? Can he block? So I'm interested to see that. It was this day last year that Roman Wilson suffered a high ankle sprain. It was the first day in pads. It was literally on a jet sweep, and he got yanked down by the back of his neck, really the back of his shoulder pads. And so this year in pads, hopefully we get to see him. Hopefully we get to see him block a little bit in team drills. I want to see Roman have a full camp just to evaluate him and kind of see where he stands. So he's kind of a big question mark. Been very quiet so far, not a lot. He had one target in the red zone. It just doesn't feel like he and Rodgers have a kind of great rapport with one another yet. So we'll see how that kind of comes about. I've seen him get some separation on guys. So I'm interested to see if he can get the details down with Rodgers and kind of get that rolling.
Right. That will be interesting because there's not, like you said, a lot of options at receiver for the Steelers. Another guy that the media is, very few words guy is Jalen Ramsey, and we've been talking to other players to try to uncover the riddle, the enigma that he is in terms of what he's like as a teammate, what his personality is, how he's evolved, maybe going from the Dolphins, where he apparently wasn't very happy, to a defense where, by all accounts, that secondary is going to be just stacked and loaded. What has been your impression seeing him out there on the practice field, reacting, how he's with players, coaches, that kind of thing? Give us your read on Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey is fascinating in terms of the player on the football field, and we are talking about a really good player. He's just been an alien out there. I mean, he can play safety at a high level, he can play nickel, he can play outside. He's done all three. He's played both sides in terms of corner. I mean, this guy is really, really good. And so I look at him on the field. I don't even have any questions. People could tell me, "Oh, he's dropped off." He looks fantastic out here. I don't really see at that at all. And then when you look at him behind the scenes, he is kind of this enigma. We've heard kind of these reports out of Miami that he was like standoffish, didn't vibe with Mike McDaniel. There's a lot of reports out there, and he has been traded 2 times. He's been traded from the Jaguars to the Rams, and the Rams to he's been traded 3 times actually, from the Rams to the Dolphins, now the Dolphins to the Steelers. So he has been traded before,
Right.
And so there is questions about him. But by all accounts, this guy loved LA, and the reason he was traded was contract reasons, and they just didn't have the cap space and the money to pay him. So that's why he went to Miami. So I'm interested to see kind of how he is, because last year, the reports and everything I've read and people I've talked to in Miami say he's kind of mercurial. He's kind of a guy that doesn't help out young guys a ton. He's not super talkative in the locker room. And then we talked to guys today, and that's not lining up. That's what I'll say. He is a quiet guy. He's not Slay, who is like bubbly and kind of very out there. Clearly, Slay's an extrovert. Slay is like an energy bubble that just kind of can't be contained. He's like this ball of energy. Ramsey seems much more subdued, serious, businesslike, about winning football games. But he's willing to help guys. I talked to Dante Ken. I talked to Corey Trice. You talked to Beanie.
Right.
I talked to those 2 guys, and they said he's been willing to help them.
Okay.
I don't know if Beanie said anything about that as well, but that's what those 2 guys have said. So to me, he's willing to be a mentor. I think Slay's the kind of spiritual, emotional leader of this. But I do think that Ramsey has been taking on a leadership role and has been willing to do so much while he's learning so much. So in terms of locker room benefits, I think he's meshing like pretty well, all things considered.
Although Tomlin, when I did ask him the question about, how he is meshing with the collective, as Tomlin likes to say, he said it's a little early yet. I mean, we're still sort of, I guess, finding that identity. And even Slay, who is coming over from, Super Bowl champions. And, there's a when you're on a team that is going somewhere, there's a spark, there's a energy, there's a kinetic feel there, and seeing how all of these parts that have come in from other places are going to gel with this team. I just think it's too early yet to know. And Slay even kind of indicated that yeah, okay, well, we have some championship guys who got, people who've won championships elsewhere coming in, but you don't know what you have together in this assembly of these spare parts. I mean, what's your impression?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. But I at least think the early returns on Ramsey in the locker room part are encouraging. Just like I think the early returns on Rodgers in the locker room are good, right? Okay. I think, people have kind of talked about Rodgers potentially being a guy that can blow up the locker room. Same thing with Ramsey. Now, granted, we've seen, Rodgers in the past throw guys under the bus eventually, and we've seen Ramsey eventually get dissatisfied and fall off. So maybe it is just too early, and we need to see them go through some adversity in the season before we even know that. But right now, I mean, those lines aren't lining up. Like Aaron Rodgers is having the time of his life. I can tell you that right now. There was an interaction he had on Sunday with Joey Porter Jr. where he kind of sprinted out. He was doing a fun game with Alex Highsmith. Obviously, you can't touch Aaron Rodgers, where he was kind of slowing down every time that Highsmith was getting close to him and then speeding back up, and then he got around him and then went out of bounds and jokingly, did the truck stick to JPJ. He's having some fun, Rodgers is. Ramsey is having fun in his own way. He's a trash talker. He is mouthy. This entire secondary, that's one thing I've noticed. This secondary chirps. Juan Thornhill is a guy that just calls out guys and starts yelling at them. And Brandon Echols is another guy who kind of goes at guys. But Ramsey, I remember, Pat Frymuth came over on a screenplay and was just kind of blocking Ramsey, and they were kind of jostling, and Pat was trying to make a joke, and Ramsey was kind of like, F you. You know what I mean? Like, and then trying to get under his skin, and Pat's not one of those guys that's going to get into a fight or a tussle there. But Ramsey's the type of guy, he's chirping. When he gets in the slot, he's yelling at Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson.
So do you think the entire secondary is taking on Ramsey's outspoken personality, or where do you think it's coming from?
I don't think Ramsey's very vocal outside of chirping on the field.
The chirping part.
I don't. That's Thornhill's thing.
Okay.
Slay's a guy that talks a little bit. I just think they got some guys that talk a little bit in the secondary, and I don't remember the last time they had that. That was a long time ago. Steven Nelson did some chirping back in the day, but this is kind of new. Guys that talk a little bit and guys that are going to jaw with receivers and try to get under their skin. But obviously, Jalen Ramsey's done it for so long and has been able to back it up.
Right, and he's adding his voice to the chorus in this talkative secondary. Any other questions that we've gotten that you want to field?
Yeah, I like this. So, what are your thoughts on the 2026 season? If Warren is back, kind of seeing where this kind of goes, is it possible they have a Detroit backfield type situation with, Montgomery and Gibbs? That's an interesting question. I've always been in favor of extending Jaylen Warren. I do not believe the Steelers are going to extend him this year. It's possible they do it after the season or they sign him and he returns. It's certainly possible. But if he does return next year, I think it is the perfect yin and yang. I think they are different enough from each other that they cover up each other's weaknesses, and it doesn't overexpose Caleb Johnson if he doesn't have that in his arsenal. Now, they can certainly go through the year, and Caleb can be this dynamic runner and just not be good at pass pro and not be a great receiver outside of, screens. And then they can say, okay, we got to bring back Jalen because he covers these things. But to me, it's going to be all development for Caleb. If Caleb can become a pass pro 3-down back, I think it's hard not to play Caleb a lot. 70% of the time. I think it just is. And that's what a running back one plays nowadays when you're a star. If Caleb can become a star, and I think he has star potential, I think that is kind of someone that is going to be a star in this offense. So we'll see. I think it really depends on KJ's development, but I would love to have Jaylen Warren around. I think he's a winning football player. I think he's the type of player you win with in this league, and I think he's super underrated. So I think they should extend Jaylen Warren, and I think if you got him back, I think having that Detroit-like backfield is very worth it, and I think they feed off each other in a similar way.
Interesting. I was kind of surprised when Omar Khan said that they didn't anticipate any more contracts for any of the the people on the team. That it seemed kind of early to shut that down because you had mentioned before that there were some guys that they could extend and build toward the future and make sure you have these guys in several years down the road.
Listen, they could extend Calvin Austin, they could extend Isaac Seumalo, and they could extend Jaylen Warren. Those are the three guys going into the last year of their deals who they could extend. Even if you look 2 years down the line, we could be Chris Boswell theoretically could get a little raise, right? There's some guys that could be in that bucket. Now, they have extended 3 guys this offseason, so it's not like they haven't extended guys. They paid Jonnu Smith. They really extended more guys in terms of internally, though. TJ, Deshaun, they brought those guys in. They pay DK a big ton of money. Then they bring in Jonnu, pay him money. Then they pay Jalen Ramsey money. It's just been a lot of guys popping in and getting money. And I think extensions at this point is a little tough because how much money do you need?
Right.
They have a lot of cap space still, and they just cleared some up by cutting Cordero Patterson. But do you need more money because you're trying to go make a splash at wide receiver?
Right.
Do you need more money because you want a safety, right? You want another big safety. You want a Justin Simmons. I think all of this kind of free agency period stuff, the late free agency period stuff, is all going to be kind of how do these guys look, right? So over the next week or two, we're going to find out how Roman Wilson looks, how Robert Woods still looks, how Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark and those guys look. And then I think the Steelers are going to talk to themselves and say, okay, do we need to go get Gabe Davis? Do we need to go get Amari Cooper? Do we need to go get Justin Simmons? And I think that's kind of where things stand on that front. So you have to take that into consideration too. There's another factor there. But, it's interesting. He didn't completely rule it out. He said nothing working right now, but we're not going to rule that out completely. So I suppose, Calvin Austin burns it up here in the next few weeks. Maybe they start talks with him and see where he's at. But we'll see kind of where everything goes. Right now, not expecting anyone else to get extended, but we will see.
All right. One question, because unlike a lot of other teams,
Mhm.
the Steelers really have no indoor facility here where they could
Yeah.
practice. So it's either out on the fields of Latrobe, or it's in a gym where they can't really do anything. Did Tomlin make a tactical mistake moving practices to the mid-afternoon where it tends in this area, the clouds roll in over the mountain, and you have a downpour and electrical storm right around 2 o'clock when they're wanting to start practice? I mean, if they keep getting washed out, how behind do they get?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's tough because we didn't even know it was going to rain today.
I know.
I mean, if you look at the weather reports, it said, "Oh, it's not going to rain today," and then the shower pops up, and boom, practice is done.
Literally, right as practice was going to start,
Yeah,
it
they were
rained.
warming up.
And then a half hour later, it was sun. I mean, it was sunny,
That's
but
what
by that
happens.
time,
It's like you're in Florida.
they're
Isn't
in
it?
the gym. Yeah,
It's like you're in Florida.
yeah,
Like, that's what it feels like
yeah.
up here. And here's the thing: they really do this indoor facility. Now they're building an indoor on the campus, and I'm assuming the Steelers will use it next year because it'll be done in November of this year. But the thing is, the Steelers are kind of in this rock and a hard place right now, where just because they practice at 10:30 doesn't mean it's not going to rain at 10:30. Well,
Mm.
you can say, oh, they're going to practice at 10:30, and then rain's going to come through at 10:30 on that day, but then it eventually actually comes through at 1. Like, it's tough. And so it's tough. Weather is a tough element. And so while I understand people saying, oh, you can move it up, this is like the first time today. They moved into the gym today. That's the first time in years. I've been on the beat 5 years. They've never moved in the gym. Like, this is the first time I was talking. Mark Cabali said it was the first time in a decade they've gone to the gym. So it's been a long time. So they don't do gym. They don't like go to the gym very often, and it's not usually rained out. And so I think that's probably a little overstated right now. It sucks, of course,
Mhm.
and maybe Mike T could have moved it back. Do you know if they checked the Doppler and maybe practice back, but they didn't want to? That
Right.
destroys their meetings, and
Right.
the guys got to get treatment, and they need to have. And here's the thing: when people say it, do it in the morning, you lose the walkthrough that they do in the morning. They don't. Last year they didn't do a walkthrough afterwards. It was, wake up, get treatment, breakfast, practice, and then meetings, and then they kind of just had time to whatever, eat dinner, get more treatment, watch tape, things like that. So it kind of depends for a team on how you do things. But the Steelers really like having that walkthrough instructional period, and so I think that is also something to take into account. Is I don't think Mike T wants to lose that instructional period. Of course, the reason Mike T wanted to move back in general was the heat, and that's something that he really likes. And if that's your argument in saying, well, does heat really matter that much because it's cold most of the time when they play? Okay, fair.
Yeah.
But it's to try and get conditioning
Sure.
up. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably a little overblown. I think there's some times when Mike T maybe could move it up an hour. For example, the first time this got delayed back on Friday, where they lost 50 minutes of practice, and we knew it was going to rain at 3 that day. Move the freaking practice up to 12:30 and practice and end at 2:30, and then you're good. And you don't lose anything by doing that either. It's not during the players' lunchtime. You don't have pre-practice meetings, like all of that stuff. You don't lose anything by doing it. So that makes sense. But when you're kind of stuck where they were here,
That was tough. Yeah, it was tough for all of those fans who came out in great numbers to see the first padded practice. As for that forecast, the heat will be on tomorrow, and right now, no rain. So the Steelers will finally get into those pads, and we'll see some popping, and we'll see how guys like Harmon perform, who looked really good, and of course Caleb Johnson. We all want to see him in the pads, but don't underestimate Jaylen Warren, who will also be in pads, and that's where he makes his bread and butter. Any other closing remarks?
yeah, I mean, not a ton tomorrow. Obviously, they will be in pads. We're expecting back some backers, O line, D line, one on ones. We're going to get team run. Now, here is one thing: is they will probably not be in pads Thursday. So that's key to note because you could, by NFL rules, you cannot be in pads 2 days in a row. Today didn't count towards a pad today, but if they want to be in pads on Friday, which is Friday Night Lights, obviously that is the most physical padded practice they have. They will not be in pads on Thursday. So they will get pads tomorrow, probably shells the next day, spiders, and then pads, and then we'll see what they do Saturday, Sunday. My guess is they'll be in pads on Saturday and then shells on Sunday. So,
and of course, he'll be covering it all. I'll be here tomorrow, and we're going to tag team on some features coming up very shortly. So look for those. But stick with Nick for all the coverage and all of the mini podcasts that he'll be doing right out of Latrell. So have fun, go Steelers, and if you can, get out here and enjoy camp. It's one of the throwbacks, baby. You got to do it.